Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Define Disaster. This is Battlefield 4, and today we're going to be taking a look at the higher damage model weaponry available in Battlefield 4. Now you may be wondering, what do we mean by a higher damage model weapon in Battlefield 4? Basically what we're talking about is a fully automatic weapon that instead of needing 5 bullets to kill its opponent, actually needs 4 bullets. Now this used to actually be the standard Battlefield 4 damage model when it started. All guns required 4 bullets to kill an enemy, and the higher damage model weaponry only required 3. But in the meantime, this has moved up, so instead of 5 bullets, you need 4. Now there are various kind of advantages and disadvantages that this brings with it and that these guns basically have, and today we're going to be going a little bit through what characterizes these higher damage model weapons and why you should or shouldn't be using them. Now before we get into all of that, let's quickly talk about the footage we're going to be looking at today. Now I've included a number of higher damage model weaponry in today's video, obviously all fully automatic weapons, but these are not all of them in a battlefield. There's actually quite an extensive list of guns with higher damage models of varying degrees, but nevertheless higher damage models with the possibility of performing a 4-shot kill in fully automatic mode, obviously without headshots, that is. And I didn't include all of them, frankly, because, well, first of all, there's no point in showing you every single gun because this is no weapon review or weapon comparison. We're not going to be looking at specific stats of specific guns and trying to find out which is the best one, because there's something like 10 or more higher damage model weapons in Battlefield 4, which just means that weapon comparison would just be pretty much a hopeless case. So we've just got a selection of the guns that have higher damage models today in the background for you to enjoy. If you wish to actually find out all of the weapons that have higher damage models, feel free to check out in Battle Log. They usually are kind of highlighted as having higher damage. That usually means they have a 4-shot kill, or search up some Battlefield 4 stats on the web. Now with all that being said, let's start talking about the general traits of higher damage model weaponry in Battlefield 4, and there's a couple. Now first of all, you tend to have lower fire rates in Battlefield 4 with higher damage model weaponry, and this has a number of reasons. Now first of all, making a weapon that has 900 rounds per minute and a higher damage model would probably be OP, and there is actually only one gun that I know of, at least, that has a higher damage model and a fire rate at that level. It is actually 900 rounds per minute, and that is the AS-Val, and that gun's higher fire rate actually only allows it to perform a 4-shot kill on an enemy in under, I believe, 8 or 9 meters. So it's debatable whether or not you would actually consider that a higher damage model weapon. And there's a number of other disadvantages that help balance out the AS-Val. So generally they have lower fire rates. Now this doesn't mean that they are less capable at close quarter, because of course they have this higher damage model. They are going to need less bullets and thus a lesser fire rate or lower fire rate to actually down an enemy, which means generally, while having lower fire rates, the higher damage model weaponry also has relatively low time to kill rates, which means basically a lot of them are close quarter capable and can keep up with guns like the AEK or even the FAMAS if you pick one that is truly suited for close quarter combat. A further trait of the higher damage model weapons that I found in Battlefield 4 is actually higher vertical recoil. Lots of guns which have these higher damage model rates, with a few exceptions of course, have extremely high recoil, especially when considering their fire rate. You find a lot of guns with 0.5 degree vertical recoil or even higher. To give 2 examples, the Bulldog or Scar H, both with 0.5 vertical recoil, even though their fire rates are way below guns like the FAMAS AEK or F2000, who have similar or often actually lower vertical recoil when compared to these weapons. What these guns don't generally though have is high horizontal recoil, at least not as category as whole. There is certain guns that do have high horizontal recoil in addition to high vertical recoil, an example of that being the Bulldog, but most of them don't have abnormally high horizontal recoil, making them more capable at longer ranges as well when comparing to something like an AEK or FAMAS, which shake horizontally like crazy. Now the last trait, if you will, of higher damage model weaponry is actually the magazine size. Most of these weapons have so-called gimped or smaller magazines, much like the FAMAS does Your typical size of magazine we're talking about here actually is normally either 20+1, so 21, such as the AS Val, Bulldog, or Scar IH, and rarely you actually also find a 25+1 or 26 magazine size, and the occasional standard 30+1, 31 magazine is also equipped on some guns, such as the Groza 1 carbine, for example. Now, how does this all really play out? What do these guns do well? What do these guns do poorly? And which situations should you really be using them in? Well, there's two categories here we can talk about. We can talk about the one category that is very close quarter orientated, very close quarter capable, usually comes paired with slightly higher fire rates, say fire rates around 700, 725, 750 rounds per minute. And there's the category that comes paired with lower fire rates, such as 600 or 650 rounds per minute, and is better suited for a wide variety of engagement distance. Now, the first category, the close quarter category of weapons, is made up out of guns such as the Bulldog, the AS Val, the Groza 1 and 4. These are all guns that perform extremely well in close quarter and actually have time to kills competitive to those of guns such as the FAMAS or AEK. Now, these guns usually come equipped with relatively high vertical and horizontal recoil versus just vertical recoil for the other categories of weaponry, and are thus not as usable at medium ranges. Now, they're still, in my opinion, more usable than, say, a FAMAS or an AEK at longer distance, at least some of them, or in some cases on par. But in close quarters, basically, these guns rip up. The only thing you have to really consider with these weapons is their magazine size. At 21 bullets, even though you have a lower fire rate, you can really only engage one, at best two targets before you're out of rounds. And you really have to make sure, like with the FAMAS, that you know how many bullets you have in your gun and how many you're going to need to down your next enemy, and where and when you can get off your next reload without being shot in the back. Now, the second category of weapons, the more versatile set of weapons made up of guns such as the Scar H or Ace 52 CQB, for example, are weapons that are much like the M416 and Ace 23, actually weapons that perform well at almost any engagement distance, almost any situation, almost any game mode. And what is so fantastic about this is basically you have a weapon that you can equip at any point in time and know you're going to be well equipped for whatever situation the game throws at you. Now, there is one exception here, and that is obviously if you're going to have a game where you know you're always going to be fighting against, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 people come around the corner at the same time. Now, having a GIMP magazine in that situation truly is not going to be helpful. Even though you have this, you need less bullets basically to kill somebody, it's not going to make up for the fact that you have 10 less or 5 less bullets than your enemy does in their magazine. So that's where these weapons suffer. And obviously they still have this very high vertical recoil, which if you cannot control, makes these weapons basically unusable. Now, depending on the weapon, I like to actually put on a muzzle brake on a lot of these guns as well, especially the ones that I try to use for kind of all situations, the all-purpose weapons such as the Scar H and Ace 52 CQB, because I find at longer range the vertical recoil of 0.5, depending on what gun it is, just becomes too much to control, versus, for example, in close quarter on a Bulldog, it's not so important, and controlling, for example, your side-to-side recoil with a compensator is more beneficial, at least for me. What these weapons do extremely well, though, and I'm talking now, of course, about the all-rounder category of the higher damage model weaponry, is extend the combat ranges very well with their damage wall. Now, what I mean by this is if you're using a Scar H at medium to long range to attempt to kill somebody, if you place your shots accurately, you can down them just so much faster. And it comes down to the fact that the longer you're shooting, either in burst or automatic mode, the less accurate your gun, of course, becomes, the higher the spread becomes. So if you need 4 shots to kill your enemy versus 5, now not only are you using less shots and it'll take less time, but furthermore, your gun is more accurate in those first 4 shots than it is in the first 5 or 10 or however many shots you mean, which means the effect is actually exaggerated by this spread increase over time, meaning that actually killing people with a higher damage model weapon at longer distances is even more effective than actually suggested by the pure kind of mathy numbers of fire rate, damage model, distance model, and how the damage kind of decreases over distance. So these weapons are extremely effective at medium range combat, and that's why I enjoy to use these quite a lot. They're a hell of a lot of fun to use. My personal favorites are actually the Scar H and Bulldog. Now obviously these are two very different guns, and there's no point comparing a close quarter assault rifle to a medium long range assault rifle, but these are the two I like to play the most. They're a hell of a lot of fun. Yes, they are challenging, especially because of their magazine size. The Bulldog can be very difficult in close quarters sometimes to use, but they're very rewarding when it works out, and they're a hell of a lot of fun. Now there are so many high damage model weapons in Battlefield 4, and reviewing them kind of properly statistically with all the recoil numbers, the damage models, etc. is difficult in all one video. So I wanted to ask you, the viewers, if any of the guns we talked about today or have higher damage models in general would actually be interesting for a weapon review or weapon comparison that you would like to see. So if there is a certain gun you want to learn more about in Battlefield 4, especially if it has a higher damage model, as we are talking about these weapons today, feel free to leave it down below in the comments, and I will gladly make a weapon comparison or weapon review about that gun to kind of give a little bit more insight into the specific high damage model weaponry available in Battlefield. But with that all being said, we are at the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed. As per usual, if you have any comments or suggestions, feel free to leave those down below in the comment box. That is what it is there for. But otherwise, I hope to see you in the next Battlefield 4 video.